Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Court issues order restraining Labour Party national chairman and 3 others from parading themselves as national officers of the party. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo writes United Kingdom court to temper justice with mercy in Ekweremadu's organ trafficking trial. President Buhari approves disbursement of 320 billion naira as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions. On the foreign scene, at least 4 young children killed by a man wielding hatchet in a kindergarten in southern Brazil. Good evening. This is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Femi Olanipekum. A Federal Capital Territory High Court has issued an order restraining the national chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Abure, National Secretary Farouk Ibrahim, and 2 others from parading themselves as national officers of the party. Others stopped from parading themselves as national officers are the National Organizing Secretary, Clement Ojukwu, and the Treasurer, Oluchi Opara. Justice Hamza Muazu issued the restraining order while ruling on an ex parte application argued by James Onoja. In an application, Mr. Onoja told the court how the restrained national officers allegedly forged several documents of the FCT High Court to carry out unlawful substitutions in the last general elections. Amongst the documents were the receipts, seal, and affidavits of the court to carry out criminal activities. Mr. Onoja said following their indictment by police investigation, the 4 people had to be arraigned in court, adding that warrants for the arrest have already been obtained. In a brief ruling, Justice Muazu held that the application and the supporting affidavit are a good case for the request to be granted. The judge subsequently ordered that the 4 people should immediately stop parading themselves as national officers of the Labour Party. Meanwhile, the Rivers State chapter of the All Progressives Congress APC has rejected the alleged suspension of its state chairman, Emeka Beke, by a faction of the party in the state. This comes after some members of the State Executive Council of the party suspended Mr. Beke, the State Legal Advisor, Iyayichukwu Azubike, and State Publicity Secretary, Darlington Nwojo. They based the sanction on an alleged involvement in anti-party activities, gross misconduct, and financial mismanagement. However, Mr. Nwojo, in company with Mr. Beke and 16 other members of the Executive Committee, refuted the claims in a news briefing at the party's state secretariat in Port Harcourt. The Rivers APC spokesman pointed out that according to the party's constitution, the State Working Committee does not have the powers to suspend any member of the party in the state, as the powers end at recommendation to the National Working Committee. Mr. Nwojo debunked the allegation of anti-party activities leveled against former Governor Rotimi Amechi by the other faction. In Plateau State, the police command has sealed the State House of Assembly complex in order to forestall the breakdown of law and order following the reinstatement of former Speaker Ayuba Abok by the State High Court. Officers of the State Police Command were at the Assembly entrance today, barring anyone, including staff, from gaining access to the complex following threats from the warring factions to take over the Assembly complex. Commissioner of Police in the state, Bartholomew Onyeka, met with the factions for an amicable resolution of the crisis and is yet to make any statement on the issue. Justice Nafisat Musa had earlier ruled that the impeachment of Mr. Abok as Speaker is unconstitutional and against the House rules. Shortly after the judgment, the reinstated Speaker made an appearance at the Assembly complex and presided over a plenary session with 8 members in attendance. In a reaction, the state government appealed the High Court judgment and obtained a stay of execution on reinstatement order. However, the reinstated Speaker insisted on continuing as a presiding officer, an action that did not go down well with the substantive speaker and some members of the House, as well as the state government. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has written to the United Kingdom court that found former Deputy Senate President Ekweremadu and his wife Beatrice guilty of organ trafficking. In a letter addressed to the Chief Clerk, the Central Criminal Court, Old Bailey in London, the former president asked the clerk to intervene and ensure the UK government tempered justice with mercy on the matter. Ekweremadu is at risk of being sentenced to 10 years imprisonment in line with the Modern Slavery Act 2015 of the United Kingdom after a London court found him and his wife guilty of organ trafficking. Following the guilty verdict, Ekweremadu and his wife were remanded in custody and await sentencing on May 5th. The Ekweremadus were arrested and had been in the custody of UK authorities after they received complaints from the young man about their alleged plans to harvest his organ. But former President Obasanjo in his letter said the Ekweremadus have learned their lesson from the ordeal and urged the court and the UK government to show clemency. In other news, President Muhammadu Buhari has inaugurated a 14-member National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The council's establishment is based on the Nigeria Startup Act 2022, which was signed into law last year. President Buhari highlighted the importance of the council in driving economic growth and job creation, as well as consolidating the gains recorded in the sector under his administration. The president said the council is charged with the responsibility of promoting the development of the country's digital economy and providing a supportive environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. He said Nigerian startups still face significant challenges such as access to funding, support infrastructure, and security payment. The council is to meet in May 2023 to make further progress on the implementation of the Nigeria Startup Act.
The council I am inaugurating today is a critical governance structure in the implementation of the Act, which will ensure that government agencies, entrepreneurs, investors, and support organizations collaborate with the startup ecosystem to achieve the goals of promoting the growth of a vibrant and sustainable startup ecosystem. In Africa, the startup ecosystem has also been growing at a remarkable pace. In 2022, African startups raised a record of $5.4 billion US in funding. Nigeria has been at the forefront of this growth, with Nigerian startups rising over $4 billion US between 2019 and 2022. I had earlier directed the Secretariat, the National Information Technology Development Agency, to commence the execution of the implementation plan it developed. One of the important aspects of the implementation plan is the development of the startup portal, which will serve as a platform that will drive the implementation of the Nigeria Startup Act 2022 and collaboration between all stakeholders.
Angry youths today blocked a major road in Asaba to protest the killing of a young man for allegedly refusing to pay 100 naira bribe to policemen along the Ugbolu-Asaba road. They carried the corpse of the young man in protest to the premises of the police headquarters in Asaba, the Delta State capital. The protesting youths urged the Delta State Police Commands to investigate and bring the erring officers to book. In Edo State, the police command says preliminary investigation has revealed that the death of a student of the University of Benin, Obokowo Desmond Rukewe, was caused by rivalry war between two cult groups. According to the command spokesperson Chide Nwabuzo, preliminary investigations revealed that Desmond belonged to the Mafite confraternity and was attacked and killed by members of the Black Axe confraternity. The police said arrests are yet to be made in connection to the incident. The confirmation from the police followed the university authorities' condemnation of the brutal killing of the final year student, mostly known as Mayor, on Monday night in a shooting said to have occurred in one of the school's halls of residence. A statement issued by the Office of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Lilian Salami, urged the students to stay peaceful as the security agencies are making strong efforts to find the gunman and make him face the law. She assured students and their parents that security operatives within the campus will ensure such incidents do not happen again. The House of Representatives today resolved to transmit a bill seeking to establish a State Security Council to President Muhammadu Buhari for assent. According to the House, the bill had met the constitutional requirement for the amendment of the relevant parts of 1999 Constitution. Consequently, the Parliament mandated the clerk to the National Assembly, Sani Tambawal, to transmit the bill to the President for his assent, in line with the provisions of the Act Authentication Act. The National Assembly had in January transmitted 35 constitution alteration bills passed by the State House of Assembly in concurrence with the National Assembly. The Kaduna State Government has approved the reinstatement of 1,288 primary school teachers who were sacked 10 months ago. Spokesperson of the Kaduna State Universal Basic Education Board, Hawwa Muhammad, announced the development in a statement today. Ms. Muhammad said 1,266 teachers were affected by the competency test, while 22 others were removed from the government payroll for alleged unproven claims. She said some of the dismissed teachers complained to the state government that they wrote the competency test and were still sacked, while those who claimed to be sick during the time of the test provided proof. The spokesperson further said some teachers claimed to have been kidnapped at the time of the test, adding that others were suspended due to the verification of their certificates. Ms. Mohammed asked all affected teachers to collect their reinstatement letters from their respective education secretaries immediately. You are watching News at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come, President Buhari approves disbursement of 320 billion naira as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions. We'll bring you more on this when we return.
Prince Royal was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate in the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness and participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
You're welcome back. This is still news at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. Court issues order restraining Labour Party national chairman and 3 others from parading themselves as national officers of the party. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo writes United Kingdom court to temper justice with mercy in Ekweremadu's organ trafficking trial. And President Buhari approves disbursement of 320 billion naira as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions. On the foreign scene, at least 4 young children killed by man wielding hatchet in a kindergarten in southern Brazil. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the disbursement of 320.3 billion naira as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions in the country. Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Sonny Echono, announced the approval at a workshop with heads of beneficiary institutions in Abuja. He said the figure represents the highest disbursements to each beneficiary institution since the inception of the fund. The TED Fund Executive Secretary said allocation to the tertiary education sector increased significantly under President Buhari. Permanent Secretary for the Federal Ministry of Education, David Adejo, urged the beneficiary institutions to use the intervention funds judiciously. The federal government has declared Friday 7th and Monday 10th April 2023 as public holidays to mark this year's Easter celebration. Minister of Interior Rauf Aregbesola made a declaration in a statement signed by the ministry's permanent secretary, Shuaib Belgore. The minister urged Christians to emulate the virtues of sacrifice, togetherness, forgiveness, kindness, love, peace, and patience, which are attributes and practices of Jesus Christ, as exemplified by his ministry on earth. He called on Christians and all Nigerians to use the occasion of this year's Easter celebration to pray for an end to the security challenges in parts of the country. Mr. Aregbesola assured that the federal government is doing all that is necessary to ensure a peaceful transition of government following the peaceful conduct of elections. And here in Osun State, the government today announced a free train ride for its indigents willing to travel from Lagos to Osogbo during Easter. This is contained in a statement by Olawale Rashid, spokesman for Governor Ademola Adeleke. The government said the free train service would depart the Edo terminus in Lagos on Thursday by 10 a.m. with stopovers at designated train stations in Ogun and Oyo to pick up passengers. It said the train would arrive at the Nelson Mandela Park train station at Osogbo by 6 p.m. The return trip from Osogbo to Lagos will be on Monday by 10 a.m. The government urged citizens to maximize the advantage the free train ride offers them to visit home and enjoy the celebrations. Media practitioners in Osun State have described the establishment of the National Media Complaints Commission by the Nigeria Press Organization as a timely and vital intervention in media space. According to them, the inauguration of the commission on Monday will further redefine the terrain of media practice in the country and hold practitioners to global best practices and standards. Emmanuel Ujadegele completes the story.
The National Media Complaints Commission initiative is driven by members of the Nigeria Press Organization, including the Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN, Nigerian Guild of Editors, Nigeria Union of Journalists, Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, Guild of Corporate Online Publishers, the Civil Society, and MacArthur Foundation. While speaking at the inauguration of the commission in Lagos, President of NPO Kabiru Yusuf, who is also the President of the NPAN, said the initiative was to watch the watchdog and serve as a co-regulator. He said it would also be an independent forum for prompt resolution of complaints against the press, maintain journalism standards, and defend the freedom of the press and people's rights to know.
All Nigerian governments, whether they are colonial, military, or civilian, have made and continue to make some effort to control the media, sometimes by stealth, sometimes openly.
The 9-member commission is chaired by former editor and managing director of the Guardian newspapers, Mr. Emeka Izeze, who disclosed that the media in the country would benefit from the initiative. According to him, this internal mechanism will help uphold professionalism.
Government, excuse government has always given in the past is that the media is operating illegally and they're doing things contrary to the law. Our argument in the past has always been that there are more than enough laws to try erring journalists. So if you publish libel, there is a libel law already existing. So you can be taken to court for that. But the government always they keep seeking for new ways to control the media, to control what is published, what is broadcast, what is sent out. This is to take the initiative ourselves to say before the government will even come, we would have done all the clearance work.
Chairman of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ in Osun State, Wasiu Ajadosu, says the NMCC is long overdue and will also curb excesses of individual journalists.
So with this commission, you agree with me that this commission is a good one, a good development for journalism practice. The commission is going to uphold the standard of practice, promote the ethics of the profession, and educate on issues that might arise in the course of performing our duties between the members of the public. If you feel cheated by the media owner, you raise a complaint to this commission.
Mr. Ajadosu adds that he looks forward to the commission discharging its duties without fear or favor for the betterment of the profession and society at large.
This commission will go a long way to enhance journalism practice in Nigeria and to actually reframe and redefine the status of journalism practice. And we also caution the practitioners the professionals. We now understand our limit in line with the ethics of our job. You know, some professionals, they operate outside the constitutional responsibility of journalism. They engage in sensationalism and the faming character of somebody working for a particular politicians at the detriment of others. They will not balance up their report. They believe that they can do whatever they want. With this commission, you cannot do whatever you think you can do that is not right.
Similarly, a strategic communication consultant and solutions journalism fellow, Dr. Rashid Adebi, believes the commission will help the media regulate their work and conduct of their members.
I've seen that the new commission is not on the government side when we look at it. I think it is the practitioners that are coming up to put this commission together. And I believe that maybe the sense of patriotism in a number of individuals that brought this up is actually making them see that there's a need to come to the media landscape to do this regulatory exercise.
According to the Nigeria Press Organization, the National Media Complaints Commission is not out to repress, control, or hinder press freedom. Rather, it is out to enhance the freedom of the media and restore public confidence in practitioners of the journalistic profession. Emmanuel Ujadigele, Western Spring Television News.
On the foreign scene, at least 4 young children have been killed by a man wielding a hatchet in a kindergarten in the city of Lumanu in southern Brazil. Local officials say another 4 children were injured by the 25-year-old man who entered the crèche today. At least one of them is reportedly in a serious condition. In a statement, military police said the assailant had handed himself in at one of their stations in the town. Firefighters said 3 boys and a girl were killed and they were between 5 and 7 years old. In total, around 40 children had been inside the kindergarten at the time of the attack. French President Emmanuel Macron today said China had a major role to play in finding a path to peace in Ukraine as it kicked off a 3-day visit to Beijing. Speaking at a gathering of the French community in Beijing ahead of a meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Mr. Macron said France would seek to work with China in the shared responsibility for peace and stability in Ukraine. The French president's first trip to China in 4 years is said to be dominated by the conflict in Ukraine, with an official from his office telling reporters he would seek to stand firm in talks with Mr. Xi. Mr. Macron aimed also to include preserving and rebalancing China's trade ties with Europe, as well as safeguarding French interests in the Asia-Pacific. Also visiting Beijing this week is European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, who met Mr. Macron in Paris on Monday to coordinate preparations. In a speech last week, Ms. von der Leyen cautioned Beijing against direct support for the war in Ukraine. In the United States, former President Donald Trump has said the U.S. is going to hell in a defiant address after pleading not guilty to falsifying business records to hide damaging information. Ahead of the 2016 election, the former president was charged with 34 counts in Manhattan court in New York yesterday. These relate to a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels, who says they had an affair. Mr. Trump is the first U.S. president in history to face a criminal trial. He said the case was simply part of a Democratic conspiracy to interfere with next year's presidential election in which he is running.
On Tuesday, Trump became the first former U.S. president to appear in court facing criminal charges. Trump on Tuesday pleaded not guilty in Manhattan Criminal Court to 34 felony charges of falsifying business records connected to 3 alleged hush money payments, including one to adult film star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 presidential campaign. Earlier in the day, Trump posted on social media that he was heading to Lower Manhattan, the courthouse, adding that it seemed so surreal that he would be arrested. The ex-president, who waved to the public before entering the courthouse, was released following an hour-long arraignment. This refers to a period in which prosecutors grant the defense team access to the evidence investigators have collected against the defense defendant. Meanwhile, the next hearing in the Trump case is currently set for December 4. Prosecutors and the defense will also have the ability to submit a series of motions, applications for the courts to make a decision on specific issues. Such motions can include a request to dismiss the charges outright, challenges to specific pieces of evidence, or efforts to change the venue or dismiss a judge, which Trump surrogates have already indicated his legal team may pursue.
Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned on a New York Supreme Court indictment returned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct.
Trump said nothing as he entered the courtroom or when he left roughly an hour later. He flew home to Florida, where he addressed family, friends and supporters at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach on Tuesday night, delivering a litany of grievances against investigators, prosecutors and rival politicians. He described the New York prosecution as election interference.
If you took the 5 worst presidents in the history of the United States and added them up, they would not have done near the destruction to our country as Joe Biden and the Biden administration have done. With all of this being said, and with a very dark cloud over our beloved country, I have no doubt, nevertheless, that we will make America great again.
Trump faces a separate criminal probe by a county prosecutor in Georgia into whether he unlawfully tried to overturn his 2020 election defeat in the state. He also faces 2 U.S. Justice Department investigations led by special counsel into attempts to overturn the 2020 election results and his handling of classified documents after leaving office. "We're going to fight it hard," Todd Blanche, a lawyer for Trump, told reporters after the arraignment. He said that while Trump was frustrated, upset and angry about the charges, he is motivated.
When you say what his reaction was, what do you expect his reaction was? I mean, his reaction was exactly what would happen if it happened to anybody that I'm looking at now or anybody that's hearing what you're saying. He's frustrated, he's upset, but I'll tell you what, he's motivated, and it's not going to stop him, and it's not going to slow him down, and it's exactly what he expected, and so to that extent, there's no surprise. But he's also upset and frustrated and disappointed and mad that this happened.
For now, Donald Trump can speak about the case, but U.S. judges have the power to impose a gag order on criminal precedents. Legal observers have said that could happen at any point in this widely watched case. On Tuesday, Judge Marchant warned Trump against making any statements that could further foment unrest or lead to violence against an official, but did not impose a gag order. Such orders are relatively rare, as they can be perceived to run up against constitutional freedom of speech rights. The legal case against Donald Trump is unlikely to conclude for years, a former federal prosecutor said. An American attorney, Renato Mariotti, said the case could continue until 2025 or later.
For sure, that trial likely would not take place before the 2024 election, unless Trump absolutely wanted it to. In other words, he'd have to push forward and try to get a speedy trial in order to get this done before the election, which would ordinarily be a very valid legal strategy in this circumstance. But I suspect he won't do that, in part because of the campaign and in part because he seems to have tried to delay other legal cases.
Western Spring Television.
The United Nations has told its Afghan staff, men and women, not to report to work for 48 hours after a Taliban order barred Afghan women from working for the UN. The UN said its decision is until it has clarity on the matter in meeting with the Taliban. There has been an increase in clampdown on women's freedom since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan in 2021. The UN has, however, called the Taliban order unacceptable and frankly inconceivable. Foreign female workers are exempted from the ban, but if implemented, these will be the most significant test of the future of UN operations in Afghanistan and the relationship between the organization and the Taliban government. Still ahead, World Bank grants Nigerian government $800 million to put up comprehensive palliative scheme before the removal of fuel subsidy by June 2023. We have more on these and other business stories after this break. Please to stay with us.
The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Fumilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladotun Ransom Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela and Be Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on the 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as a watershed character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history.
Welcome back. And now to business. The World Bank has granted the Nigerian government $800 million to put up a comprehensive palliative scheme for its citizens before the removal of the fuel subsidy by June 2023. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Hamid, revealed these shortly after the Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari. According to Ms. Ahmed, the Nigerian government has resolved to end fuel subsidy by June and hence has begun moves to make the impact less stressful for the citizens. She noted that already there has been meaningful engagement with the newly established Presidential Transition Council and the incoming administration with a view to driving the palliative program. The minister said the government was targeting about 10 million households or 50 million vulnerable Nigerians in the first instance. Mrs. Hamid added that a good chunk of the fund will go to the 10 million households considered to be most vulnerable to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has advised Nigerians to know their rights as consumers and not hesitate to report any case of loan sharks following harassment of Nigerians by the digital lenders. This comes as the FCCPC recently completed the registration of digital lending applications to sanitize the industry of fraudulent operators. Olayinka Ali completes this story.
For many Nigerians, the existence of online lending platforms has caused more harm than good. One of the reasons people borrow money from these lending platforms is to grant them relief at a point they need money. Many have been faced with loan sharks, harassment and disgrace from family and friends. A loan shark is a person or an entity that loans money at extremely high interest rates and often use threats of violence to collect debt. Interest rates of loan sharks are generally well above an established legal rate, and often loan sharks are members of organized crime groups. Report says that the federal government approved 173 digital lending applications to operate in the country. The approval of the digital lending platforms by the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission followed the harassment of Nigerians by the digital lenders. This prompted the FCCPC to begin a registration drive to protect citizens from the atrocities of these apps. Mrs. Abimbola Ailemen, Assistant Director and Head of the Consumer Education Department, FCCPC Southwest Zone, has affirmed this.
How do we come in? We want to streamline them, separate them from because there are so many. Now we want them to register, and through registrations they are giving guidelines that they must follow that will protect consumers' interests. And once these guidelines are followed, consumers' interests will be protected. When you fail to do it, you will be sanctioned.
On the streets of Oshogbo, Osun State, Nigeria, some residents like Kenneth Ebo, Chibike Okediono, and Mumi Odewale gave a hint on how dissatisfied they are with the incessant calling and short messages they receive from online loan apps because someone on their contact list patronized them. They have implored the government to find a lasting solution to this.
It was quite embarrassing to some extent. Really, it's down on somebody when maybe a family member or a friend you don't talk to for a while, then you just get a call saying that the person borrows a certain amount of money and you are being placed as a beneficiary, which is not possible. So it's not only being called, it's not only calling, you get diverse of SMS messages. So to some extent, I even receive countless of WhatsApp messages from those agents trying to tell me to give the whereabouts or how they can come in contact, and trying to tell me that we shouldn't transact any business with them. And I think the government should just try in their own capability to put an end to it.
I don't think it's a right for them to be reaching out to your contacts, in the sense that there must be an agreement you had with them before they will. You must have an agreement with them before they will go ahead to, start calling your contact. It doesn't make sense. It's breach of contract and it's breach of confidentiality. You understand? So on behalf of government, I think maybe they should look into it because it's not proper. Because once somebody breaches someone's state of, let's say, confidentiality, you understand? Because it's an agreement, you understand? there must be consequences. Something like maybe there should be a law that says that maybe so person breaches or do that, understand? So thing will happen to the person.
Actually, it's very embarrassing anyway. Like, you can imagine somebody calling you for somebody that you don't really know, or probably know when the transaction being within both of them. It's not really good. It's not cool. But I think there's a way they can actually do that. Probably you can invite them over.
The case, however, is different from Latifat Arolo, who said surprisingly she has never received such a call nor message.
No, I haven't had that kind of experience. They've not called or sent me any text like that.
Mrs. Abimbola Ailemen, however, urged consumers to know their right and not hesitate to report any case of loan shark.
Once there's a contract, whoever breaches it is at fault. But the thing is, the way these loan people go about it, sometimes you don't even have time to think about how will it affect me. Sometimes there are hidden policies that they won't tell you until you are in. And you go, I never knew it was this bad. And then suddenly you find yourself in. And when you find yourself in a situation like that, there's tendency to breach it. But so that it will not be so, we now have these guidelines. Consumer knows the guideline, the loan people knows the guideline. Whoever now breaches it can report the order to us.
CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele had earlier warned Nigerians to beware of illegal money lenders. The CBN Governor explained that those who go to collect loans from places other than microfinance banks or recognized institutions are at bigger risk. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
South Africa's government has revoked a national state of disaster declared in February to manage a crippling electricity crisis. On February 9th, President Cyril Ramaphosa invoked disaster regulations to fight the crisis that included daily rolling power cuts by state utility Eskom due to frequent breakdowns at its aging coal-fired power stations and years of corruption. The state of disaster gave the government additional powers to respond to crises, including by permitting emergency procurement procedures with fewer bureaucratic delays and less oversight. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Thembi Nkadimeng said in a statement that the government will now work through its Energy Crisis Committee to reduce the effects of power cuts using existing legislation and contingency arrangements. In sports, the Interim Management Committee has suspended Remo Stars General Manager Ekweremadu for assaulting the referee during his club's game against Gombe United. Adams was said to have assaulted Ndibusi Uka in the dressing room, which led to the disruption of the Nigeria Professional Football League game on Sunday. The game was later concluded on Monday and it finished goalless. In a statement today, IMC said Adams is banned from all NPFL activities for the rest of the season, adding that Remo Stars must ensure diligent prosecution of the Remo Stars general manager. The club was also fined 1.25 million naira for the double offense of failing to adequately secure match officials before, during, and after the match, and disturbances and disruptions which led to the discontinuation of a league match. 3 points and 3 goals would also be docked from the cumulative of the club's performance this season as punishment. Remo Stars are third in Group A of the NPFL Abridged League with 21 points from 12 games. The points deduction would see them drop to 5th. In Italy, Romelu Lukaku says Serie A must take action for real this time after he was racially abused by Juventus fans before being sent off yesterday. He was shown a second yellow card for holding his finger to his lips in front of the home fans after scoring a 95th minute penalty in the Coppa Italia tie. The Inter Milan striker wrote on his Instagram that he had been through the same thing in 2019 and 2023. Michael Giomac, president of Lukaku's representatives Rock Nation Sports International, said the abuse was beyond despicable. Juventus said they would work with police to identify those responsible following the game. Scuffles broke out between players from both sides after Lukaku's equalizer. Inter captain Samir Andanovic and midfielder Joan Codorado were shown red cards after the final whistle, with the fracas continuing down the tunnel. Alexander Seferin was re-elected unopposed for a third term as president of UEFA at a meeting of European football's governing body in Lisbon today. The 55-year-old Slovenian lawyer, first elected in 2016 following the downfall of Frenchman Michel Platini, will remain in the role until 2027. The UEFA Congress came just a few weeks after Gianni Infantino was re-elected as president of the sports world governing body FIFA, also unopposed. Seferin recently successfully opposed proposals by Infantino to hold the World Cup every 2 years, and his re-election by acclamation comes after he also fought off the breakaway European Super League project during his second term. He will now oversee the introduction of a new format for the Champions League starting next year.
The current president of UEFA, Mr. Alexander Seferin, for a new mandate of 4 years as UEFA president by a big round of applause.
We must never forget that we have a duty to ensure that the interests of football prevail over the private interests of a handful of privileged individuals. I'm not going to go into the details of the ill-fated plan put forward by the 3 clubs officials, 2 financiers and 1 spokesperson. There's simply no point at this stage. I think all has been said till now by the ones who love football. But still, those who promote these projects are now claiming that they want to save football. They want to save football. It's really great that nobody has ever died of shame. In the space of a few months, the so-called Super League has turned into a character in Little Red.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. A Federal Capital Territory High Court has issued an order restraining the National Chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Abure, National Secretary Farouk Ibrahim, and 2 others from parading themselves as national officers of the party. A Federal Capital Territory High Court has issued a restraining order on the Labour Party Chairman Julius Abure and other officials. We also told you that President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the disbursement of 320.3 billion naira as intervention funds for public tertiary institutions in the country. On the foreign scene, at least 4 young children have been killed by a man wielding a hatchet in a kindergarten in the city of Blumenau in southern Brazil. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. My name is Femi Olanikbeku. Thank you so much for watching. Good evening.
The Berlin Conference of 1884 defined the configuration of Africa, which hitherto existed as a continent of multiple kingdoms and empires under native rulers. The conference, otherwise referred to as Congo Conference,